I would like to talk about post-curating as feminist art practice and politics. And of course, post-curating is a debated term. It actually still not clear what does it mean. Some researchers describe it as difference between more discursive and more practical reasoning behind it, but I will come to this. I wanted to start with the quotation from Vasif Kortun, the director of SALT in Istanbul, where he says that the post-curatorial denaturalizes the institution's presumed authority and asks for a different reality to work with its constituents. It is not merely to interpret the world, but to be in it and to face the dissonances. I really like this idea of post-curating as some kind of destabilizing of institution. Also, I think that post-curatorial, it's not only that something which comes after the exhibition or something which comes against the exhibition, when Simon Sheikh sometimes reflects on it. I rather think about post-curating as a kind of, in a way, curatorial / artistic intervention where you use exhibition as material itself. Then now, of course, I also have to refer to Simon Sheikh discussion about post-curatorial, and it was brought because of the differences of the terms of post-curate and post-curatorial, meaning post-curatorial, he was actually rethinking what Irit Rogov wrote together with a philosopher, Jean-Paul Martinson, in their publication in their volume Philosophy of Curating. And they made this distinction between curating and curatorial. And now I'm quoting, if curating is a gamut of professional practices that had to do with setting up exhibitions and other modes of display, then the curatorial operates at a very different level. It explores all that takes place on the stage up, both intentionally and unintentionally. By the curator and viewers, by the curator and views it as an event of knowledge. So to drive home a distinction between curating and the curatorial means emphasize a shift from the staging of the event to the actual event itself, its enchantment, dramatization, and performance. So basically, what is interesting here, for me, that the importance of performance, and actually, I personally don't see that big difference between those performative approach in post-curatorial and post-curating. So what I wanted to try to do, like to look through practice, because I'm also like artist who is doing a PhD in practice, like my PhD is based on research, my artistic practice. And recently in Vilnius opened an exhibition, and we have a curator, Ieva Astachovska, here, and it is curated by Margaret Talley, Ieva Astachovska, Eglė Mikalajūnė, Difficult Past, Connected Worlds. And I thought that this exhibition is a very good example of how to rethink different modes of post-curating, and also how to rethink curatorial at the same time. Also how to actually connect those worlds which sometimes seems too different, too distant. So for that exhibition, I proposed to the curators to rethink the story of one famous Lithuanian historical figure and poetess, namely Salomėja Nėris. And for those of you who haven't met her, and nobody has because she's dead, I would introduce shortly that she was perhaps the most important figure after the war, not only in terms of her literature talent, but also because she was considered as traitor, because she was one of the 20 people who went to the Soviet Union, to Moscow in the 1940s and signed a declaration asking Lithuania to be included into the Soviet Union. But till nowadays she is still the most discussed person, and as one literature scholar wrote, Salomėja Nėris is the most famous Lithuanian. Like she wrote the most famous female Lithuanian, but maybe in a way she is the most famous Lithuanian, perhaps more famous than Sabonis, I don't know. So Salomėja Nėris for me was not only interesting because she is that great, both in terms of achievements and failures, but more of how her depictions, representations, and her political and life story still affects us, and how it is changes through artworks. So my first intention was actually to find in the storage the old painting by Bronė Jacevičiūtė, which you can see, and to bring it back to the permanent collection where it was hanging before. And by going to that storage and looking for this old painting, which was quite nice, as I can see now, we found another painting which was much worse and more Stalinist. You see, it's like painterly qualities are much worse, but it is much bigger. And what is interesting about that painting is that I was not that much interested in actually artistic qualities and even some historical facts around it, but I was more interested in stories behind the paintings and behind the pictures. So this painting and also that one, as you can see, they are very similar, are painted by the same painter, Bronė Jacevičiūtė. And Bronė Jacevičiūtė was the pupil of Salomėja Nėris. So Salomėja Nėris taught her, and she encouraged to choose an artistic career, and that was like very important person in her life. And talking about this particular painting, the testimony of the painter is that she overheard that her family is about to be deported, and then she had this commission and she painted this huge socialist realism painting, basically saving her family from deportation. So that is an interesting story behind the painting. Here is Salomėja Nėris. That's here I show some pictures for you to understand why you will understand why I'm doing this. Here Salomėja Nėris is reading her poems in Moscow when she went to sign, and again the same structure as in the painting, like she is alone, surrounded by men, and I'm not even going to all those stories how those men actually seduced her into communism, but then she was a delegate of this Supreme Council, and then also this, as you see picture, the one famous literature theorist, Viktorija Daujotytė, chose this picture, this photograph, for a newly published her Facsimile edition of last volume of poems, which was edited and censored and issued with a different title. But she chose this particular photograph because she thought that there is this kind of remorse or some kind of difficulty in her face. And what is interesting, like the whole discourse of remorse and grief of the poetess, which is happening, and it started circulating even during the Soviet times. So she signed the declaration and then she regretted it. And here is the picture of Salomėja Nėris in her hospital bed just before her death. And also, again, the same expression, which is important because soon we will move to other artworks which are sort of using this idea of a poetess in remorse. Here you also see another painting by Bronija Sevičiūtė, where Salomėja Nėris, it's like you see, there was the Stalinist period, and now it's like thaw, it's like more painterly, and she is alone by the Baltic Sea. And also the sculpture by Vladas Vildžiūnas, where what was important for him, that he stated that, yes, he heard one dissident talking like this. Juozas Keliuotis recalled how Salomėja Nėris came to him after coming back from the USSR, likely having been shamed by her friends, weeping. "Little Salomėja, what have you done?" And the sculptor really resonated with that story by Keliuotis. And imagining the poet in that kind of despair, he made the portrait. Perhaps this was the reason why it was initially discarded, and even he had his fee reduced, because the portrait did not really have the ideological function. There is a lot of pain in that portrait. Much of that suffering is hidden, which everyone knew behind the scenes, but nobody dared to address openly. So that is the testimony of the sculptor's daughter. So you see this idea, this grief sort of coming from the portrait from inside. And what is interesting for me is that even in that public monument, like this wooden sculpture was created in '61, and this public monument, which is still present, do not know for how long, but you see this expression of this official Soviet poetess, but she has this very troubled expression, very like grieving. So it is an interesting case of sort of reversing the idea of public monument, making it kind of difficult from inside, like really taking inside outside. So in order to connect all those artworks, I placed a video by Kulturistes in the middle, which basically shows this monument in its constant rotation. This is like our constant, this is our constant rethinking of what does it mean, who is Salomėja, what is her legacy, can we separate a traitor from a poetess, and so on, and like what is the legacy of the artworks, and what is the meaning of those artworks? What kind of stories do we tell when we show them in the National Gallery of Arts? And so two paintings and a sculpture brought from the museum storage and newly installed into permanent exhibition, together with video by Kulturistes, inquire into artistic representation of the poet Salomėja Nėris, searching for a hidden meaning beneath the official image. This post-curatorial intervention brings works that reveal the tragic dualism of Salomėja Nėris, a Lithuanian nightingale and a traitor. But what is even more important were like continuation of certain stories which are emotionally written in the artworks. So we have this Salomėja Nėris as the main heroine, and we have like all of her images coming together in this post-curatorial meeting. But what is even more interesting, that it's not the end of the story. The interesting story is about the painter herself, the painter Bronija Sevičiūtė, who painted those paintings. While she was painting this beautiful poetess Salomėja at her native Baltic Sea, another poetess came to visit her at her studio, a poetess, Janina Degutytė. And they both admired the poetess, and they both found that Salomėja Nėris is somehow crucial for their artistic life. And so Bronė Jacevičiūtė, a painter, said that Salomėja Nėris somehow mystically brought Janina Degutytė, that another poetess, to her life. And that's this lifelong friendship started, and they were living together all their lives. So it's an interesting story how they actually, this mythology, not only like there is this political, social, artistic interconnection of narratives, but then there is this personal story which completely like goes to another sphere, and this is something what is interesting to consider when you think about artworks outside the art historical canons and discourses. So enough of love stories. Now, I came to Kumu. That's the best part. I came to Kumu expecting, of course, to see the exhibition, Thinking Pictures. And we went, we went. And it was the best thing I ever seen in many years of visiting exhibitions, because I saw those just like, abstract places, triangles and rectangles, not triangles, showing the places where actual works should be put on the exhibition. And I thought that it was actually not a conscious decision, it was kind of historically motivated because of the war. It was a difficult decision, but actually it became a very strong post-curatorial statement, really showing and not showing, of, for example, really playing with what it means to have artworks, and what it actually means in many, many museums of the world. There are many, many artworks, and we usually see just like a tiny fraction of those artworks. And then, for example, those artworks which were supposed to be in the exhibition, and hopefully they will be in the exhibition, they are here. Like the artworks are present in the storage, but they're not on the exhibition. And I really like this dialectics of promise, of certain seduction, or even of imagination, that you are invited to think, and then even like curators, by giving their curatorial tour, they were doing this performance, really like look at this, look at that, and we were looking at those gray places. I think it was actually very interesting and inspiring to think what are we showing, what are we not showing, and how this performativity and chance is important in our understanding of and constructing the narrative. So I wanted to actually finish this with again another quote from where is it from Sara Ahmed, which I think actually resonates with the idea how it is important for curatorial thinking, this post-curatorial thinking, to be open for all kind of ruptures and schisms and inconsistencies and weaknesses, and something which is maybe at the beginning seems like a weakness or incompleteness is actually maybe the most interesting things, which inspires to think further. So Sara Ahmed says in her Willful Subjects, can we learn not to eliminate the signs of disturbance? Disturbance can be creative, not as what we aim for, not as what grounds our actions, but the effect of action. Disturbance at what is created by the very effort of reaching up, of reaching out, of reaching for something that is not present, something that appears only as a shimmer, a horizon of possibility. Thank you.